back, everybody. In today's video we will be covering the topic of which arrow is best for you, like which arrow would I personally recommend, or which arrow should you go with. Now it also depends on what you're going to be using those arrows for. Like, for instance, if you're going for target, then you should go with like probably a 6 mil diameter. Or let's say you're going for hunting, you should go with something just that's not as big of a diameter. And also, a lot of people get specific with the grains, like depending on if you're hunting a different type of animal. Like for me, I mainly just hunt white-tailed deer, but there's people out there hunting elk with like 700 grain arrows that I personally just don't need whenever I'm hunting whitetail. Now specifically, I've got two arrows here, and one of them is one of the arrows that came with the bow that I did recently, the review on the bow. And this arrow, this is a 500 spine arrow, which the spine of an arrow just says how much bend it can do. Like this one, I can bend it almost like a little twig off a tree. Whereas the arrows that I upgraded to, these are 350 spine Victory V-Force. These are 350. See, there's not near as much bend compared to this arrow right here. Now also, whenever it comes to shooting, this arrow is going to fly a lot straighter and it's going to hit harder. Whereas this arrow here, this arrow is going to want to do this. Because whenever you shoot this arrow into like a target, for instance, it's going to go into that target, and then this tip back here is just going to move around. Therefore, if you were to be in a hunting situation and you were to shoot this arrow, let's say 40-50 yards, that arrow is going to have enough time to do this, and it could throw your shot off, or you won't be able to get your bow sighted in. So just based on that topic, and then also you got your vanes. A lot of people go with different style vanes. I personally went with the blazer vanes, which I fletched myself, and it's got a right helical. Now a lot of people don't really want a helical. Some of them like them straight. Most people say you should see which way your bow wants your arrow to go, and then you should fletch your arrows according to which way your bow wants to spin the arrow. Well, 90% of bows are strung with the string twisted to the right. So therefore your arrow's gonna naturally, from the bow, want to spin to the right. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, I've had a lot of success with this right helical. Then another thing we got to talk about is inserts and outserts. Now a lot of people like outserts, which is it covers the end of your arrow, just like an extra little bit of protection. And then some people will go with like 75 grain inserts. My inserts here I've got on this arrow here is only a 10 grain insert, because for hunting whitetail I don't need very much front weight. I also only use 100 grain field tips and 100 grain broadheads, which therefore overall will bring my arrow weight to 400 grains even. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's way too light, that's way too light. Well, that 400 grains I would say is like a reasonable thickness for an arrow. Some people will say I'm wrong. Everybody to their own, but I'd mainly. And then you also want to talk about your fletching placement. On these ones you can see the fletchings are probably, I'd say, an inch or two from the back. Now a lot of people, you're not going to want that far forward, because most bows nowadays, the brace height's 6.6, about 6 inches. That would put that right about there, which would mean your rest is going to be touching these fletchings, which is something you don't want, unless you've got a drop away rest or something like that, some sorts. Now, another thing we can get to talking about is nocks. Now on this arrow, I've got, well, it's like a little cheapo knock because it's what come with the bow. And on this arrow, I have got a knock rated for 75 to 85 pounds. Now the reason I've got such a heavy knock on there is because I want to balance. You're going to want to balance the weight in the front, in the back. If you don't have a balanced arrow, you're not going to have good shooting. Therefore, you won't be able to pattern nor sight in your bow. Now, a lot of people are also going to wonder what length. I would recommend you go to your local bow shop, or if you don't have a local bow shop, what you could do at home is, if you have like a tape measure or somebody with you, if you stick your arm straight out on both sides, measure that, and then divide it by, I believe it's like 2.5 or something like that. But you could look up how to do it, and it'll give you an estimation on your draw length, and you're going to want your arrows to be probably an inch shorter than what your draw length is. Some people like to go shorter, some people like to go longer. Personally, I like my arrows to stick about an inch and a half in front of the riser. Most people will say, oh, I want my arrows right flush against my rest, and it's to each their own. But mainly, the type of arrow you want really depends on the animal that you're hunting. So let's say you're going out to hunt a deer, like me. I'd recommend a 350 spine arrow, cut to your draw length. But a lot of people don't have bow shops near them or something. And I'd say you could go to Walmart, and they've got a pretty large selection of arrows, anywhere from 26 to 31 inches, which is plenty long of a arrow gap to cover for, which is most draw lengths. But now let's say you're a woman and you've got a shorter draw length, 25 and a half inches. I'd recommend you go to the local bow shop and purchase some arrows from there and have them cut them down to length. Because the worst thing you could do is have an arrow sticking too far out in front of your bow, which means you're shooting a heavier arrow, which means you're going to have way less of a chance of reaching out there and grabbing that big buck. Now we've got arrow weight, like the weight. So this one right here, bare, like this, no tip in it, weighs 300 grains even. Now, whenever I shoot this arrow, I do shoot it out to 60 yards. Would I ever shoot a whitetail that far? No. Because once you get out past 35 into 40 yards, they start dropping. Your arrow's not going fast enough. Now, whenever I'm shooting this thing, this arrow flies great. I mean, perfect, straight, just like it should. Now, some bows, let's say you've got some arrows like mine, these ones, I've got my bow sighted into. But let's say you break off one of these arrows and you want to go to the store, you buy you a new one, just from like Walmart, not from the bow shop. And then you go to shoot that arrow. That arrow, more than likely, will not shoot like the arrow that you broke or lost. So what I'd recommend is, if you're going to shoot an arrow like this, shoot all of them until you have no more. But as you're going through them, I'd be buying new ones. Because if you shoot this, and then let's say I put this arrow in my quiver, this arrow here is going to fly way different than this arrow. Because this arrow doesn't weigh near as much as this one does. So that I've just seen a lot of questions on about that, and I figured I'd get on here and maybe answer it for a couple of you guys that are looking to get some new arrows or get into archery. Now, your local bow shop, you can more than likely buy bare shafts, which is just this arrow shaft here, and they'll come with inserts and nocks most of the time. I would have your local bow shop, mine here will fletch them for me for free if I buy the bare shaft, but some local bow shops will not do that. But I just keep that in mind when you're looking to go and get a whole new upgraded arrow setup. And a lot of people also ask about heavy arrow setups versus light arrow setups. A heavy arrow setup is gonna have more front nose, like it's gonna be more nose heavy than it is tail heavy. Therefore, you're not gonna be able to shoot out real far ranges unless you have your arrow 100% balanced. But we'll talk about heavier arrow setups on another day. But that's all I've got for you all now.